Hello, everyone. I hope you guys are doing well today. Uh, Happy Sunday. Some of you have probably had some snow. I think, got a total of 3 or 4 inches this last week, and it's been really fun. And I've enjoyed it, except, for getting the car off the driveway and onto work. But it is much better. The snow is pretty much melting pretty quickly. We got 40-degree weather now, so yeah, so that was my track Stride, my second track of my EP, 4-track EP Winsome. You can check that out at soundengraver.com, but also my artist channel, soundengraverrecords.com, is well, not .com, just just Soundengraver Records. So let me take this banner off and see how it is. Audio sounds great. Yeah, so audio is a little, I don't think it's much different, but I broke my mic stand, so I'm using my Prof's mic stand. So hopefully that's good. Just gonna grab a swig of water real quick and then welcome the chat and talk about the art of analysis. I think this is a really important thing to discuss, not just for art, but really for life in general. But I think we can talk about art predominantly since most of us, if we're not artists, we at least like art in some way with some medium. So let me grab that water. And then let's put it to video. All right, might be a little bright. The lighting's a little different. My computer responded to the light a little bit differently today, so I have an extra light just in case because it was really dim. It looked I looked a little sickly when I first started, so I was like, oh, no, I need a little bit more light. So welcome. So let's see who is in the house. We've got Ghost Planet. Thank you for coming. I know I think you came back early from seeing a friend, having dinner and stuff. So thank you for coming. We've got my wonderful prof, channel member, mod, and professor and husband. Well, he's not my literal professor, but he is a professor. Ready for your wisdom, my Tenuvia. I hope so. I hope I'm wise today. Brian Gilmartin, welcome. You say, honestly, I don't think I've ever stopped analyzing art. This is good. Never stop, because I think analysis is really important, and I think we're losing it as a culture quite significantly. And I'll talk about some tangible examples, and then if you guys can talk to me if you have similar observations, that'd be nice to know. Private Eye, good to see you. Samuel Proctor is saying that you won't be here long today. That's okay. You're on your way to your grandmother's. Good to see you, though. I'm glad you can stop by for however long you are sticking around, and then have a wonderful evening with your family. Let's see. I called actually, so I'm approaching 30. Oh, not 30, 40. I mean, I've got a couple years before turning 40, and I'm very blessed to say that I still have my grandparents from my dad's side of the family. They're doing all right. It was my grandfather's birthday yesterday. I gave him a call, and he's doing wonderful. I think God has blessed them with no health scares or no episodes, but I just in his manner of speaking and his breathing between words, and it's like, oh man, they're in their mid 80s now, and my grandfather, I mean, it's hard to imagine him living as long as he is, but at the same time, he used to be super healthy. Like in his 40s, he would bike across country on a bicycle, not a motorcycle, on a bicycle. He would always be biking, always. And when he was in his 60s, when I was a kid, we would bike, and I would bike for like 3 or 5 miles, maybe not even 5 miles, and I was so tired, and he could outbike all of us. Like 5 miles was nothing to him. So, now 5 miles, maybe it wasn't 5 miles. That sounds too short a distance, but I think, no, I'm probably thinking of another mileage. It's miles that doesn't sound long on a bicycle, but it really is. Yeah. But anyway, he was a very good bicyclist, cyclist. I don't know how you call it. So it was good to hear from him and my grandma. They've been married forever. I think they celebrated their 50th like a few years ago or something. That's good stuff. All right. Let's see who else is in. Ace is wishing me a good evening. Chris Lashes is wishing everyone a greeting. Ace says, thank you. Winsome was great. Thank you for purchasing. I saw that you had purchased my EP. Winsome was great, by the way. I shared the link with a bunch of friends. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm very proud of those tracks. Especially well, I love all of them, but Sunny Reverie is a track that I actually can listen to on repeat, even though I made it. I that sounds strange, but when you work on so long on a project, you're like, well, I don't have to listen to it, but I think it's a track I can come back to and just enjoy it, even if it's in the middle of like a playlist of all sorts of people and their tracks and stuff. It's like, oh yeah, I did that. I'm very proud of that one. I'm particularly liking that track to listen to on repeat, which is nice. Usually, even though I love the music I compose, I don't need to listen to my music. I mean, I'm sure a lot of composers feel the same way. But let's move on down. Amy L, good to see you. Final Fantasy also in the house. Good to see you. We've got a Dig Outlaw giving me peace sign. Good to see you. What's on my... Oh, I've got a little black mark on my hand. I think that's I put on mascara. I think that's what it is. All right. Ghost says his mother is getting trying to get a liver transplant. Oh, for your half brother. Yes, we'll pray for him. Hopefully it's a match. Okay, let's yeah, we'll pray for you, Ghost Planet. That's very, very important, and I hope it is a match. I pray that it is a match. That's very, very, very important. Oh, thank you, Ghost Planet, for praying for my grandpa. Yeah, he's doing fine. Mid 80s, you know. He said, I said, well, happy birthday, I love you, as I'm wrapping up the phone call, and he says, oh, don't wish me a happy birthday. It's just only a reminder of how old I really am. I mean, I hope I live that long, honestly. I just gotta cut down the holidays have been really bad about eating white bread, so I'm trying to. I used to not eat white bread at all, but I'm eating a little too much. So, Brian Gilmartin says, I have to really wonder, has America ever had the ability to analyze art? I mean, the boomers in particular ways always dismissed anything remotely fantastical as strictly for children. Yeah, that's a really good point and catalyst for our discussion. I would say, and I think Professor Geek, my husband, would agree. He and we came from academic circles. We came from higher college education, and he's still a professor at a college, and it's not in our nature. It's not. I don't want to say it's in our DNA to analyze, but I think with classical training and discipline and curriculum, I think with enough experience there, if college is done right, you are expected as a student, and especially as a professor, even as a tenured professor, you are expected to provide appropriate analysis of different things. Now, we can talk about analysis, and we will, I think, in the formal way, in the formal academic way. Not that you have to be a university student to analyze, but we can also talk about in the informal way. So actually, let's talk about the informal way first. And I'm happy to discuss in the chat. This is going to be a really classical. It's going to be a very casual conversation. So the informal way. Let me present to you a scenario I've seen more and more in the wonderful world of YouTube. So I've been listening off and on to different discussions and interviews conducted by Jordan Peterson. And if you ever, well, getting first, I'll direct my thoughts specifically to Peterson. So, he interviews all sorts of guests, mostly intellectual, sometimes academic, mostly academic, sometimes political, sometimes more of if it's a popular influencer or commentator. Now, I would say, though, he has the propensity, and it makes sense, he has the propensity to invite guests who are of the highly intellectual, highly academic, especially when it's, well, not always, but quite often he'll have people more in his sphere of academic influence. So people who are specialized in psychology, social science, uh, neuroscience, almost in the way of kind of quantum physics and emotion and perception, things like that. Those are his particular interests. And I noticed that I personally, I wish I was, but I've come to notice that I really spread out. Um, uh, I should say I really select certain interviews that I'm interested in watching of his, and then I'll listen to a few minutes in of others, especially the hyper intellectual interviews. And it's not that I'm not hyper intellectual. I just have no interest in the way of um, neuroscience and psychology as they are talking. And how am I saying this? Let me say this correctly. The way Peterson conducts these interviews with psychology and neuroscience and even things like quantum physiology and stuff like that can actually get over my head pretty quick. And sometimes I think, well, I should be interested, or is it over my head because I'm just not that smart to listen to him? But even though this is a YouTube video, so he's trying to appeal to the masses, right? Or is it a matter of interest? I think it might be a little bit of both. I think a lot of that language is over my head, and I do think maybe that's the reason why I'm not as interested in. Maybe he's not using enough layman's terms with some of these guests when they're engaging. And I have found with those particular interviews and discussions, it's just not my cup of tea. Maybe it will be 20 years from now, or maybe next year, or yes, maybe something will flip a switch and I'm like, oh yeah, I really am. I'm kind of working with this in science fiction. I'd like to listen to this a little bit more. Now, if you're like me, you'll do two things. You'll try to analyze, okay, why is this discussion not getting to me, not sending me? Like this discussion doesn't send me. I'm not interested. You do that, and then you go to the comments. With YouTube, I always go to the comment section, even if I never engage with any of the comments, even if I never post a comment myself. I always look at people's thoughts on such discussions. And whether it's this hyper intellectual interview that he has, or even just a socio-political interview that he has, most of these comments, like predominantly these comments on YouTube, and this isn't just of Jordan Peterson, this is of any YouTube commentary, any podcast discussion type of content. You'll notice. I think you will notice. I'm saying this to you. Just kind of observe these things if you haven't already. These comments are more and more about praising the commentator. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's always, oh, he's so smart. Oh, he's so eloquent. Oh, he's really helped me get back on my feet and be responsible. Oh, thank you, Jordan Peterson. Oh, thank you, Bishop Barron and all these people. This guy is so smart. Like, it's always these accolades. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. I've done that myself with musicians and such. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it's like, I'll also see, in addition to those accolades, I'll also see, this is the most amazing discussion, or this is the discussion of the century. Again, there's nothing wrong with such praise, but tell me, this is the academic in me. Tell me, okay, why do you think it's the discussion of the century? What are these two figures, the interviewer and the interviewee? What are they saying particularly that is making you think that this is the discussion of the century? Now, I know people are hyperbolic in their praise. That's fine. But something like that, something like, oh, this is the talk of the century. What is making you say those words? And I can't give an exact number. I won't even give a random or more arbitrary number. I don't think I can. But I would say, well, maybe I'll just say from my own observation, with something like this discussion or interview or content, I would say not even 5% of the comments really describe why such a discussion is praiseworthy. It's just, oh, this is a good discussion. Why? Like, tell me what in particular. Now, sometimes people will put, what the interviewer or interviewee says in quotes, and then they'll say this is deep or this is important for people to know. So some people will be specific, but on the whole, people just praise the person, or the two people, or whatever panel of guests are on, and they'll never say why something is good. They'll never say why something sends them, or something has impacted them. And so this is the more cultural YouTube sphere I'm talking about. I'm not talking about art directly, but there is an art of speech. There's an art to interviewing. There's an art to public speaking. And so I would treat it as such. I would say, you know what, this speech is a very good speech for this reason, for these themes, for these elements, or for this conditional logic or the flow of logic of the speaking. And I just notice with people in that in highly intellectual sphere, like Jordan Peterson, for instance. And I don't like all of his stuff. Like there's a lot of stuff that he's interested in. I have no interest. But I listen to some discussions of his, but I see nothing but accolades and praise, which is well deserved. He does deserve those accolades. But it's like, tell me why you like something so much. And so we'll shift that attitude, we'll shift that scenario, that situation with the art world. I had listened to a couple indie artists talking recently, and one person had finished an art project. So person A finished an art project. Person B had received that art project. And person A asked person B on the live stream, well, what do you think of it? So you got it. You got it. What do you think of it? And person B, and I know he's an intellectual, person B said, oh, I liked this part, but he never said he liked the whole. As someone who analyzes, that cues me towards something, and that is, I don't think person B thought it was amazing, or he would start reviewing why it was good. So it was a scenario where I think it's like, oh, that's a good first try. Now he didn't say it like that, but it kind of sounded like that to me. Like person B said to person A, I got your art piece. I thought very well of this thing at the end of it. It wasn't the whole of it, or this small piece here. He didn't talk about the whole of it. Now, he might have refrained from talking about the whole of it because maybe he didn't think it was that good. It was person A, this art piece was his first endeavor of such an art medium. But he's like, yeah, what'd you think of it? What'd you think of it? He wanted to know, and he asked him in the form of a live stream. Now, if I was in that position, if I received a piece of art, especially from a friend, from a colleague, friend, peer, whatever, in the form of a live stream, I would have some expectations of the artist. I would say, listen, you're asking me to share my opinion of your art. I will, and this comes from being a teacher, I will say what's good. I will say what needs work. Are you comfortable with that? But I got the feeling that wasn't an established condition on the live stream between person A, who gave person B his art piece. And now, going on to a different scenario, what if person B thought so well of the art piece? I have a feeling this person in particular, I think he would give off why he thought it was such a great art piece, but he didn't. So I'm guessing he wasn't fully impressed. I guess his expectations weren't met. I don't know, but maybe he doesn't even know. Maybe he thought it was amazing, and he just didn't know how to say why the whole of it was amazing in the live stream. It could be a number of scenarios. Now, person A in particular, I've heard him only say about art pieces that he absorbs and consumes and stuff. Person A, he's one of those, oh, this was great. Oh, this is so good. Oh, I'm gonna get this one. I'm gonna get this piece. I'm gonna get this art. I'm gonna get all of this. And he keeps consuming art, but not once have I heard him say why a piece of art is iconic. or why a piece of story or narrative, why it sends him. Now, yeah, on the one hand, I'm saying a comment section for Jordan Peterson discussion or a live stream between two indie artists, you know. I don't want to say this is the whole of it, you know, this is everyone everywhere. But I have not, besides Professor Geek and maybe people like David Stewart, you know, the YouTuber, and maybe I just need to listen to more people and I'm not listening to enough people. But on the whole, I'm not hearing analysis and critique after the accolades, after the praise. Now, Professor Geek will review a story and he'll say why it's good. He'll review a story and he'll say why it's weak or what a misstep is or what is particularly strong about this specific story. Now, he comes from the academic sphere as a student in the liberal arts world, but then also as a professor of writing. So it's kind of ingrained in his brain. It's true of me as a music educator. It's ingrained in our brains to discuss why such an art piece impacts us. And this could be a TV show or even smaller than that. It could be an episode of a show. And why certain things work and why certain things don't work. So that's more of the informal analysis where people are just like, this is the discussion of the century. It's like, tell me why. Tell me why you think that. Can you write that down in a few sentences? Now, maybe people think I'm hard-nosed about that or overbearing about that, but I think when people just only praise something or only criticize something, it makes me believe, gives me the impression that they don't know why that specifically they're praising something or why they're specifically criticizing something. And what that tends to do is, and I hate to use this language, I want to be polite about this, but it actually does make you dumber in the way of art, in the way of speech, in the way of what you're reading, what you're viewing, what you're listening to. It makes your mind a little mushier, not as acute. You know, you're not sharpening your mind. You're not sharpening your intellect. Now, what does that do for the artist? Well, that slows progress. You know, if you're not analyzing any kind of art form, even art you're not specialized in, you might not be then aware of where you're struggling, where you're stumbling. So analysis is really, really important. Let me get to the chat and then we'll continue to discuss this. Hello, Big Al. Good to see you, my friend and channel mod. All right, grab some water. Excuse me. Keep hitting my keyboard. Sam Proctor says, I listened to Jordan Peterson a lot in high school. Him and Shapiro helps me. They helped me develop my own political views and also made you feel that I'm not the crazy or alone in my thoughts, especially in school. Oh yeah, I think that would. Oh, see, high school. I have to say I had a really good high school experience. One was I was really good at violin, and people saw me as a leader in the music group, so they really respected me. So if I was for someone who was you know, bullied, if I tried to talk to them, they would say, oh, she's cool with this geek or this nerd. Okay, I'll be cool. So I had a little bit of respect, but also, so kind of the music people, the music theater crowd, they stuck to one part of the school. The sports people, they stuck to another part of the school. Our school was actually divided into like sections. So if you were in the liberal arts, you were the Renaissance school. If you were in science or history, you were in another part. I forgot the names of the different factions. And not that there was any competition between the factions, but it's like, oh, I'm more interested in this. I'm in the Renaissance. So that was kind of nice, I think, if I remember correctly. But then I spent the last 2 years of high school in community college. So I had it great. I couldn't imagine being high school the time you're in high school. So yeah, someone like Peterson would probably be pretty important to listen to for young people, especially young men. Let's see. Oh, I forgot how to pronounce his name, Brian. You say for me you started with, is it Mark Levine? I read one of his books, but I never heard him speak. I read one of his books in my 20s, and I can't even really remember what it was about, to be honest. It was a political book. And then when I heard him like 20 years down the road, like, oh, that's his voice. He kind of looks kind of macho when he's young. And then he kind of has a higher voice. I then moved on to people like Micah Curtis. I don't really know him. Um, oh, Mendes. Oh, yeah. Am I thinking of? Okay, I think I know who you're talking about. I think I know. And if it is the same guy, I like him too. I forgot his full name though. I'd recognize it though if it was brought to me. Um, let's see. Final Fantasy says it's easy to say one doesn't analyze a story due to laziness, and that's a valid reason why analysis is lost. However, there's one part of analysis where it gets annoying if one does analyze. They analyze a story or a piece of art by looking at three different perspectives from a feminist, from a Karl Marx hatred toward capitalism, and Sigmund Freud's mommy issues. Okay, but that's a very good point. That's a very good point. When I say analysis, yes, there is a dangerous form of analysis in the academics. We're colloquially we use the phrase critical theory. Now, critical theory is a type of analysis that wants to break apart all the construction of the thing, to deconstruct the whole of a thing. And that could be an intellectual exercise, but it can't be the end all be all because I can't even remember. I just heard it recently. I forgot who quoted it, but it's this person said essentially, you know, things. Anyone can destroy things. Not everyone can build things or make things. So in the matter of deconstruction, like for instance, deconstructing a melody would mean taking the melody apart and seeing different cells of the melody and see why it works the way it works in the musical structure. But you can take it too far, saying, well, let's just pull this whole melody apart. I think I've used this example before, but there was one, I don't think I was in college when he composed this, but one of my professors, he was he was into the uh, late Romantic, getting into the 20th century French composers, Ravel, Debussy, and I think he took a Debussy melody, and basically he almost, I would kind of call it plagiarism, but not really. I don't know. He would take I don't know if it was a famous melody, but it was a melody by Debussy nonetheless, and he would like chop it up and then invert it and permutate it, and then it would like be submerged in the orchestral piece or the ensemble piece, and then another melody, part of the melody would like resurface. So it was Debussy's melody, but broken up, fractured, and then displaced, everywhere in his music. And well, that to me is a form of deconstruction. That I think might be an interesting idea, but like don't do it all the time. It's not an end all be all thing. It's like no, like Debussy's melody was written with intent, and he is personally a very good melodic composer. He's a good textural composer too. He works with musical texture, musical structure, and melody, and wonderful harmony. And Fauré too actually is a very good harmonic composer. But that's a form of deconstruction that can go too far. Use it as a mental exercise. Like take the sentence, take the passage, and isolate some parts of the passage and see why it means what it means. But critical theory, on the other hand, wants to reveal why such musical gestures or melodic structures are pointless. And how I know that that is true is for decades now, the faculty at my college at the University of Washington, they they don't write with melody. They may work with consonance and dissonance, but not in the neoclassical way. In fact, now that I'm thinking about it, I might as well just say I sometimes go to the University of Washington's website, seeing who's performing. Sometimes I will go to their YouTube channel to see who's performing. And she came years later after I graduated, but Friday, I think is her last name, she's a classically trained violinist. She's the main professor of violin at the school right now, and she recently had a faculty concert. Now, a classically trained violinist who has a faculty concert usually, and she did for a long time, usually would work with Beethoven, Mozart, maybe some of the later classical pieces, or Stravinsky or Schoenberg or something like that, but neoclassical or classical. Well, her recital, and I'm just kind of rolling my eyes. And this is an example of analysis. This is my analysis of her faculty recital. She did this more multimedia concert where it was her and a pianist, or her with electronic pedals and speakers and stuff, and this kind of spinning light and this light installation. Cool, multimedia, great. It's been done time and time again. It's interesting. But what killed me was she's used to doing very, very tense, very classically tense pieces of music to show off her ability as a violinist. The music she did was this pretty sounding music, but it was violin playing that any serious high schooler could do. Not a college professor, not a person who's played violin for 30 years or longer. Like, I could do it in my sleep probably. A high schooler could do it. She was working with technique that anyone can do at least an intermediate level. So here's absolute beginner, intermediate, late intermediate, advanced, master. So immediate, like, anyone could do it. And she did that for her faculty recital. Yeah, it was pretty. It was sonically pretty. It was interesting with the light, but it was boring. It was like, they weren't even long pieces either. They were like between 5 and 8 minutes, and it was too long. It was like, no, this is like a 2.5 minute piece. Now that's my analysis. It's like, why is a prestigious violinist who's head of the violin faculty, the string faculty, who's mastered all of this repertoire, why is she doing something a high schooler and their intermediate level couldn't do? Why is she doing that for her faculty recital? And I can tell you why. That school, the University of Washington, has for decades done this 20th century, 21st century experimentalism that favors experimentalism over technique, over classical technique. And I don't care who in my faculty now or who in the doctorate student session now, I don't care what they say. Playing Bach, playing a Bach sonata is way more difficult than any of the 20th, 21st century technique is concerned as far as extended technique. Now, maybe Brian Ferneyhough, maybe he's an exception. Maybe his music is technically difficult. But even things like, even people who I love, George Crumb, but the experimental technique is nothing to classical technique. Classical technique is way harder. Playing Brahms' Violin Concerto is way, 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 way harder than all this beautiful, sonically interesting experimental technique that these college professors are doing now. It's like, I think, give me enough time and I will dance circles around you. Give me a month or two of very hard practice and I will dance circles around all these faculty doing all this stuff. And it kind of makes me upset because it's like, no, faculty recitals are to show the student body and the general public just how good you are and how you should, how much you deserve the faculty position because you're so good. But it's like, no, a high schooler could do what you did tonight. Yeah, multimedia, that's pretty interesting. But then again, so this is analysis. Now it's more of the critical side and not so much, oh, this was so good, but analysis nonetheless. And let's continue on down to the chat. Hopefully I'm not like, because the mic's right here, so hopefully I'm not saying anything so loud, so loudly. All right, so let's see. So Brian Gilmartin says, so what you're saying is you want people who will deep dive into a subject rather than just stop at praising and trashing it. Oh yeah. I think that's where it's lost. And maybe outside the academic circles in America, maybe it was never a thing. But I mean, for instance, part of the culture is, and I'll say it, like, I'll say it time and time again, but I was undeservedly criticized for my bad review of Hyperion. Dan Simmons' Hyperion is not a well-written book, and it's a horrendous cliffhanger to get you buying the second book, which, by the way, most people who love the first book, what I've read, they're like, I like the first book. I was a little more disappointed in the second book, and then by the third and fourth book, I was out of it. Most people say that, but because Dan Simmons is this like cult classic of a sci-fi author out of the 80s, they deemed me stupid for saying it's a poorly written book. Now, I will say there are, and the thing is, they say, how can you say that this story was beautiful? It was A plus, and like, yeah, that story in this little part in this big book, this little part was good, was top tier, but that's all that was good. Like two stories, and then the rest was not good, and it was also in a lot of ways offensive to things like the Catholic Church. Offensive actually too, if you think about it. And I'm sorry, I'm being a little socio-political, um, but I don't know how people viewed people with Down syndrome in the 80s, but like part of the horror story in Dan Simmons involved a colony of people that were obviously Down syndrome. Now, if not the actual condition of Down syndrome, at least facially. And it's like, but people were like, no, just the brashness of that, the edginess of that. That's what makes it so good. Now, I will say that horror story in the book, I will say it was good. It was offensive on religious grounds, but I won't deny that actually deeply scared me as a tale. It's a very horrifying short tale, and then well, it's not that short. It could have been shorter. And then another story that was tragic involving a father and a daughter. That was also good, but that was the only thing. That's all they remember. That's all they remember. They don't remember, these people that criticize me don't remember how horrible all the rest of the narrative was. And it's such people, as Brian, you say, you can't stop praising it or you can't stop trashing it. These people who got at me for Dan Simmons and criticizing him, they they could not stop praising him. They could not stop praising Hyperion. It was like, well, tell why did you like it? And then they would say, well, how the setup was, how the worlds were. I was like, yeah, that was good too, but the story was not good. Like the world building was great, had a lot of potential, but the writing was like C tier at best, because it was so convoluted. It was so convoluted and very long winded. So I gave my reasons. The pacing is off. And so I wish people would think deeper. Um, whether or not you like this show, if you guys remember the Benedict Cumberbatch adaptation of Sherlock, I'm not saying I think that's a good adaptation of Sherlock, but I remember watching that show. And one of Moriarty's minions of sorts, even though he was kind of terrifying too, he was telling Sherlock, he's saying, "Why can't people just think?" And I love that line. It was a line from a villain, but they could have saved themselves from certain death if they thought a little bit more deeply. So I always think of that line. Why can't people just think? Why can't they think a little bit deeper? In the show, if they thought a little bit deeper, then they would get out of a, um, death. But and Sherlock did because of his intellect. But I love that line. I'll never forget that line. He was kind of a forgettable villain, but his line stuck with me. Like, why can't people just think? And it was great. So, anyway, let's continue on down. Amy L says, I think critique is a learned skill, though. Even in art school, not all departments do equally well. I think that's a good point. Um, I think I think the art of critique, the art of, well, I mean, you learn thesis writing even in high school. You learn the art of argumentation, or you should at least in high school. And I'm not saying I was good at it. When I was in high school, even when I was in college, I was not good. This is stuff that wasn't, first of all, it wasn't taught to me that well. I wish people who were 20 or 30 years older than me when I was a student, I wish they taught me how to do this. I more or less I haven't really taught myself. Uh, I have in the way of I'm just reading people a lot, like reading a lot of books, listening to a lot of discussions, like with Professor Geek and all that. So I think you're right that it is a skill that needs to be taught. I don't think it needs to be restricted to formal education, whether general or higher education. I think it needs just to be a social practice of some kind. Um, Maybe start with something like a high school curriculum, but let it foster, let it develop. So yeah, you're right about that. Let's see. Brian says, honestly, I have similar feelings toward reviews of video games. I'd like to see people delve more into actual game mechanics rather than just talking about story, graphics, or other things about the game. So yeah, like how games are developed. I think that's very important, especially if you have an interest in making video games yourself. But why certain things function the way they do, I think is also very important. So, let's give some examples. So let's talk about music first, and then maybe talk about writing in a little bit. But so what does music analysis look like? Now, I'm going to come from the higher education of analysis, but I'll put it in layman's terms because honestly, like that, it's easy to do. Uh, but but you could still, even if you're not an academic, even if you are, average Joe, you can pick up these points, why things work the way they work and why they don't. So with music, okay, so something that you analyze is melody. So how easily something can be sung, how easily something can be remembered, how much the melody pulls from one point to the next point in an effortless way, like it's leading you to that. How harmony is in conjunction supporting the melody to do that. And the better the harmony, the more bolstered up the melody will be. It kind of works in tandem, like good harmony betters the melody. Same thing with bass. A lack of bass, the song really goes to kaputs. I don't think that's a word, but you know what I mean. When you have a good solid bass, like the bass instrument itself, the low end itself, the sound itself, and then also the bass line, you've got the floor of the house. With no bass, no floor of the house, and you can't walk in the house without a floor. I mean, you can, but it'd be probably pretty difficult. So you don't, the foundation is not there. You need a good low end, you need a good bass. Things like pacing and phrasing, there is actual conditional logic involving music grammar. So, for instance, and I tell this to my students all the time, and I use this example. So, I'll say something like, oh, yeah, the flow of the music is this way. So, one example, I was like, well, what do you mean by phrasing? What do you mean by you breaking things into little 4-bar measures and then another 4-bar measures and then a completion of 8 measures? Well, with the let's just do 2 4-bar phrases. Well, it sounds like this. If I like vanilla, then I'll like vanilla ice cream. So I have a clause and then I have a conclusion. And music is full of that. And it might not just be 2 4-bar phrases. It might be 8-bar phrases. It might be a number of 4-bar phrases followed by a very long-winded phrase. Tchaikovsky, sometimes he goes as far as like 28 measures of that kind of phrasing. But phrasing, cadence, pacing, structure. It's like if you don't have these elements in place, you're not going to have a good flow of music. Another very important thing that I didn't really know until after college was musical texture. How dense something sounds, how sparse something sounds. I got a little bit with my freestyle improvisation when I was a college singer. I was more of a vocalist in my graduate studies because I didn't have a violin at the time. But sparsity, texture, pull back when you need to pull back. Bring in a lot of instruments when you need to bring in a lot of instruments. Things like monophonic texture. What is monophonic? Monophony. It means when there's one singular line with no harmony, no bass, no contrapuntal counterpoint motion. So, strengthen a piece of music with a monophonic line, and that's it. We also work with homophony or homophonic, which is where there are many different voices, like 3 to 5 to more voices than that, but they're all singing or playing at the same rhythm. And then finally, polyphonic, which is multi-textural, so different rhythms with different voices. Well, something that really bolsters a beautiful musical narrative is start with some chordal structure and then do like a little fugue, a polyphonic fugue. That was done by Schumann, Bach, Schubert, Beethoven, Haydn, all sorts of things that if they're not defined, if they're not put in place in a logical way, then the music can come off as flat, or it can be too long, or it can be too short. It's like, oh man, I wish this music piece wasn't too short. It should have been 3 minutes longer. Oh, that piece is too long. It should have been 15 minutes shorter. Things like that. So all this requires a little bit of even layman analysis. So someone who hears a single line of melody can identify it as one voice. Maybe the college student will say monophonic, but it still means the same thing. You don't have to say, oh, the monophony of this or the polyphony of this. There's something like antiphonal. So you have a voice, you have a call, and then you have another voice, a response. Nursery rhymes, that's in the mom talking to the baby and the baby mimicking the mom. I mean, it's these archetypal things that we ought to be aware of. And then the lack thereof, it weakens the art piece. So if you can say, wow, that was a great piece of music because of this, that's a very culturally significant thing to pursue. And okay, you don't have to be a specialist, but say why a piece of music sends you. Like, oh, I love this song, or I love this here. And maybe you can't technically explain what's going on. Sometimes, I'll tell Prof like why a certain function in a song he likes works. I'm like, oh, it's because of this. It's what they're doing here, and he appreciates that. So that's music. That's one example. Writing, I'm not as specialized in because that wasn't my field of expertise. But something that Prof is very good with is pacing and sentence structure. How long a sentence is, how short a sentence is. Should a sentence have a number of clauses in it? Should there be no clause except one? Or maybe not even a clause at all. How that works, how language works, who your audience is. When you're using a certain language, is it speaking to this audience in an effective way? So things like that. One second. I gotta cough for a second. Okay, excuse me. So, is it gone? No, I gotta cough again. Came back and attacked me again. So, forms of analysis is really important. So, maybe it's the academic in me wanting to say this, but maybe it's just generally pursuing good art. Like, okay, why is this a good discussion? Why is this a good art piece? And if you're not giving me a reason, like I was saying with the live stream of the two YouTubers, person A, person B was not saying what was good on the whole of it, which indicates to me if he is intellectual, and I know he is, you didn't think much of it. Like that's what it is. But it's kind of like what Prof says with consume stories responsibly. It's like, what does responsibly mean? It means it's not garbage in, garbage out. You're internalizing what made the piece of literature great in the first place. I just finished a Paralandra of the Space trilogy, so I'm going to that Hideous Strength. I think is the final installment, which I haven't read before. I read Out of the Silent Planet and Paralandra, like I think probably 15 years ago, maybe even longer. And I don't remember it, and I now know why I don't remember it, is I was too young a reader. For however short those books are, especially Paralandra, Out of the Silent Planet is okay. It's comprehensible, but Paralandra, man, it's deep. It is philosophically, religiously, and metaphysically deep. Like, you have to understand what C.S. Lewis is describing pretty much on a page-by-page basis. And sometimes it is chewy. You have to listen, or you have to go back a few pages and reread it again. And it's a short book, but it is, and there's a little bit of action, but it's very much it's not even just describing things in the world and describing modes of action and manner of speaking. It's describing what does that signify on the metaphysical level. It's a dense, chewy book. Now, I did enjoy it, but I would recommend the story only with people who are ready to read that kind of literature. And that Hideous Strength I never read, so I don't know exactly how the pacing is going to be there. But yeah. So Oruko, oh no, Oroku, or Oroku. I can't say that name. Oroku. I'm gonna say that like that. Out of the Silent Planet. I haven't read that. I heard the song though. Yeah, is that based on a famous song or a famous band? It's good. Well, it's they say it's C.S. Lewis's sci-fi trilogy, but it really is science fantasy. It's heavily religious. It's heavily fantastical. Like there's analog to who God is in the narrative, who Christ is in the narrative. Uh, More analogous, I think, than the Chronicles of Narnia, and that was pretty obvious. Um, so, all right, Scorpio Bio, good to see you too. I think yeah, that with coffee. Okay, Ace, good to see you. You say you got to split a piece out and catch you humans on the replay. Good, that's good. Let's see. Amy L says the critics we had in my program sound like what you're describing. I envied what they have in drawing and painting and ceramics. I heard graphic design was bad, but still better than what we had. The critics we had in my program sounds like what you're describing. Well, I'll have to listen to myself again because I forgot what I said. But thank you for affirming this. Thanks, Amy L. Let's see. Private Eye, if I haven't welcomed you, welcome. The art of critique on YouTube is dead due to the fact that everyone ends up saying, in my opinion, more as a shield than looking to critique something. Not that they don't have an opinion on something. Yeah, having an opinion is important, but rather saying that they are more subjective about what they are gonna say. Yeah, that's okay. So if I can put that in a nutshell, yeah. So art is objective. I've made the case so many times on my streams, my fixed video, my commentary, and how you yourself as an individual view art. That's what's subjective. The experience of the art piece is subjective, because it's going to be different from other people, for good or for bad. Whatever the case is. And so part of your experience viewing art is also your opinion of it. Now, I can say, while I wouldn't prefer a very good art piece, I could say why the art is good and why I don't prefer it. And I think that's important. They can't be conflated. So your opinion of something does not dictate if that art piece is good or not. That rests outside you. And it's kind of hard for people to realize that when they say art is subjective, it's like saying beauty is in the eye of the beholder. That is only true to the extent of your experience of the art. But if you have a bad experience of the art piece, that does not mean that the art piece is bad. It could be bad, but you would have to tell me why that art piece is bad. And if I see it as objectively true, then I would accept it. But if the art piece is good and you just don't prefer it, you can't say the art piece is bad because you don't prefer it. You know, your opinion on something, your experience on something is separate to the art piece itself. Because you can, I've said this before, you can like really bad art and be fine that it's bad and be fine that you like it, you know, that you prefer it. Oh, that's okay, Crystal Ashes. You say, sorry, not talking much. I don't have a whole lot to say, just enjoying the discussion. Hey, that's fine. I appreciate you just being here. And hopefully I'm interesting in this topic, because it can be easy that it, you know, it's like, I guess it could be easy if you're very involved in the chat, but you don't have a lot to say, to lose interest. For me, I tend to, what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. I'm fine with being very involved in the chat for other live streams, or not at all and still be engaged. So hopefully it's still engaging. Brian says, I haven't had much to say myself, mostly because I haven't seen too much art commentary. Yeah, more art commentary. Oh man, so man, I don't know if I want to do this, especially before you visual artists out there. I don't know. Well, let me at least start with this topic too, before we wrap it up or whatever. This what I wanted to say. Well, I guess I should start with, you know, what's the point of analyzing or having good analysis of art, you know, whether it's good art or bad art. Well, it's to let the truth ring out. By that I mean, like, this was the sin, if you will. This was the sin of something like the Siege of Mandalore with my YouTube channel. 3+ hours of content. There are normies not normies, there are geeks out there. Because I'm a teacher of one such geek, and her father's such a geek, and an associate's such a geek, and they all think that the Siege of Mandalore is such a well-written arc. And I told them, I said, listen, I've got 3+ hours of commentary on just how bad that season was and how bad that writing was. One of those things, one of the themes, if you will, or at least the points of all that commentary with the Siege of Mandalore, with Star Wars, is the writing was saying the opposite of what's true. It was trying to persuade people the opposite of what's true. So what it means to be a hero, and based on that, and you can look at my Siege of Mandalore commentary if you want, you know, with the character like Disney Star Wars, and I think they failed. It surprised me. I was surprised that Ahsoka is not as relevant as she was like 4 years ago, and it kind of makes me happy. I was wrong. I thought she was going to be like the seminal figure for all of the century going forward with Star Wars, but I don't think that's the case. Anyway, through many different ways, over many different years, over many different seasons, the writing was trying to say and trying to persuade you that she was a hero, when in fact things were happening that was contradicting that. It was the opposite of what was true. And that's the whole point of analysis. When the whole world 4 years ago was saying, oh my gosh, she's so good, she's such a pure character, she's such a hero, and the writing tried to persuade you that was true. Well, it did persuade most of the world. It didn't persuade me. Based on the writing and the flow of all such logic, she was not a hero. She did very unheroic things, but people said, no, she's a hero. So that's the whole, well, that's one major point of analysis, is like, let the truth come out. Because if the whole world is saying what's true, and in truth, that's the opposite of what's true, you need to say it. And you need to say why. It's like, you need to say why such a thing is bad, why such a movie is bad, why such a character is bad, or the reverse, why such a movie is seminal, why such a story is good and excellent. So it could be either way. It could be why something is very bad or why something is very good. But the whole role, the whole function of that is to reveal the truth about something. So I was really indignant when people came at me saying, no, 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 you're wrong about this. Because this is what happened. And then I present them the facts. I say, hey, this is what happened. Would you call such a character a hero for doing these horrible things? And then I'd get trolled and stuff like that. And that's fine. You know, if you have a strong opinion about anything, you're going to get some pushback, no matter what that is. And it's fine. You know, it's fine. But you know, I had to present the lie. I said, guys, this is what the whole world is saying. This is what Disney is saying about these characters, and it's not true. And people they didn't understand that they were being persuaded to accept the opposite of what was true because they don't have a mode for analysis. They don't have a process, you know, for thinking deeply. And part of that, the fault of that, at least culturally speaking, was because they were presented with such obvious dross and garbage that something like the Siege of Mandalore looked really good in comparison. So they couldn't see the bad writing because everything else looked really, really good. I'm not faulting, I forget the actor's name. I'm not faulting the actor who played Darth Maul in that series, especially Siege of Mandalore. Great vocal acting, great character design. I don't fault him for acting very well as a villain in that season. Things looked impressive. Mandalore and the halls of Mandalore looked impressive. Everything looked impressive. I mean, and I said before too in my critique of Ahsoka Tano that early on I liked her design. I think her character design is good. I liked a lot of her arcs. But then when I looked at it more deeply, I'm like, oh man, this is a flawed character who everyone says is perfect. It's like, she could be a flawed character, but people need to know she's a flawed character. And so that's one example, a major example of the whole purpose of analysis. It's like, this is what analysis enables. It enables you to see the truth and dissuade people, not dissuade, I guess you could say that, or convince people that what they're thinking is true is not true. Yeah, it's involving art and stories, but then it needs to be involved with social things like reading a newspaper or listening to an influencer or seeing some news commentator and like, okay, is what he's saying accurate? Is what she's saying accurate? You know, get that critical thinking in order. So yes, I'm coming from a place of academics involving art, but it can be applied to other parts of life as well. So, Aruko, I can't say your name. Oroku is saying that Ahsoka Tano is a stupid character. You also say that Anakin Skywalker didn't need an apprentice, yeah. And then, and she was, as you are saying, truly, she was overshadowing Anakin way too much. Oh yeah. He was like it got to the point in her writing where I think Anakin loved her more than Padme. And that's a little creepy to say the least, but it's also wrong too. So I made him fall to the dark side. Oh no. No. Let's see. Brian Gilmartin says, to be honest, I don't like the logic of it's okay to like bad art. It just sounds like a passive-aggressive way to insult someone's taste while tooting one's own horn. Well, that's not where my logic is coming from. Because I think I gave the example a while back, a long time ago, where I was listening to a retro wave track and the production of it wasn't great. Even the composition itself was not great, but I liked it. Now, taste is subjective. Now, like, again, it's subjective for, liking good art or liking bad art. I don't think people should be, I personally don't think you should be insulted if you do like bad art. Like, does that make sense? And people, I mean, I I remember my mom talking to me on the phone one day, and I was kind of like, I don't know, teasing my roommate for liking a show or whatever. And she's like, you can't do that. Like, people really are protective of what they like. And it's true. People are very protective of what they like. But, you know, it's okay to like bad art. Um, and even if you don't know it's bad, um, I think that's fine. And I'm not criticizing people for preferring that art to other things. Or maybe they like good and bad art together. Um, yeah, I mean, maybe you've experienced people insulting other people for liking bad art. I don't think it should be a thing to be offended by. Like, if I like bad music, it's 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 just something that I enjoy, you know? So that retro wave track, yeah, the composition, like, the only thing that really kept me listening over and over was this melody. I don't know who composed it. It was a long time ago, somewhere on SoundCloud. And the melody was gripping. I was like, yeah, okay, that's good. But then the rest, like the production of it, the sound levels, the mix, the composition structure, it was cheesy. It was like, okay, this is cheesy. This isn't great, but I'm enjoying it. And if someone came to me and said, this is not good music, honestly, I probably wouldn't even share the track. I'm like, nah, I like this track, but it's not that great. I think people need to be, well, I'm not telling you what to do, but people can accept and be okay with liking art. Now it comes to the point when they say it's good art because they like it. It's like, no, you gotta know the truth. So, um, Oroku says, I don't like the Clone Wars series. I tried to like it in the beginning, but it did too many wrong things with the lore. Well, that's good that you picked that up. I didn't really pick it up until, hmm, I don't know. I can't even remember. Honestly, I don't think I really picked it up. Well, I had some misgivings. Let's say that. Like, there were some things I'm like, I don't think that's right. But I didn't say it. I didn't explain it to myself why it wasn't right. And then lore came 2 years later, whatever, however long later. I was like, oh, that's not bad. And then I started thinking, okay, well, if I think this is bad, should I just go back to other things? And then when you start understanding and analyzing why something doesn't work, you start picking it up with other things. And it's like a snowball effect, you know? So, um, let's see. Brian Gilmartin says the problem is that calling it bad means it's not okay to like it. Oh, I don't think that. And liking it is deserving of ridicule. Um, no, I mean, if you like a bad film, I'm not going to fault you for liking a bad film. Where I would, again, I hope I'm not repeating myself, but where I would say is like, it has to be brought to the light why a certain thing is bad or good. So, there are people out there I've talked to who don't believe bad art exists. And, and I've discussed that too. So yeah, it's kind of, as long as the truth is out of what is objectively good and what is objectively bad. You must have friends. I must have people I've known over the course of the years who say, "Oh, it's a bad film, but I kind of like it. It's kind of corny, or it's not well paced, or stuff. I kind of like it." Um, I mean, or something that looks bad or looks absurd, but is actually pretty well done. If I remember, it's such a cult classic. Like, a couple, can't even remember who produced that, but like a long time ago, like seeing films that are utterly absurd, but I'm like, it's not a bad film. I was talking about Dark Star to Prof last night. How it's such an absurd movie, and I hadn't seen it in years, like years. And then when I reread the premise of it, or the whole synopsis of why that movie exists, I was like, oh, that's actually not a bad film. And I think it was John Carpenter who did that film. And but like a lot of the stuff kind of looks off, about that. All right. Oh, is that true? The show Clone Wars made more retcons than George did with the prequels? Probably. Well, especially since I've read more EU stuff, it's like, oh, thanks, Filoni. Private Eye says, I didn't pick up on liking or not the Clone Wars until I realized I forgot most of what happened in that series. Plus, I kept comparing it to the Tarkovskys. So, yeah, I probably still need to watch that. People just claim it's really the best adaptation of the Clone Wars. So, I think Professor Geek has seen it. I don't think I saw it. Hey, Fitzjose's Corner. Brian says, plus I admit I'm the kind of person who would fault someone for liking a walking sim type of game. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. So, let's see. I don't think I need to do this. I was kind of, I'll just say out loud what I'm thinking. I was kind of wanting to pick on the Rippaverse for a second to prove a point about critical analysis. So I was talking about music and writing because that's what I do. And I can explain to you in layman's terms why such a thing in the musical flow works. But I'm not a visual artist. So I don't really have the eye for visual art. Um, but even as an artist who's not a visual artist, I can pick up what is terrible art. Now, I won't pick it up as fast as someone who is in the visual arts, who explores human anatomy, who explores background settings. But I can pick up a few things that if I do, it's like, okay, you really need to take your art seriously. And I wanted to show a panel, and hopefully it wouldn't get me docked because like it's one of his characters. It's one of his female characters. Should I should I show you what I'm thinking of with Rippaverse or not and just say my point? I'll just go ahead and do it. I don't think it's obscene what I'm about to show you. But it's a little racy. So we'll see. Let me first go to his channel. Oops. Hopefully StreamYard won't. I don't want to show. I'm not showing any videos. I'm just showing art. And so let's. And actually, I need your guys' input. So I'm gonna make this big because you guys are the visual artists. So I'm gonna show you what I think. And let me know what you think. So yeah, I'll start with this. Yeah. All right, Rippaverse. I heard about that. Are his comics good? Not in my experience. I read one of his comics and it's not good. Not good. And I did a review of it too. It was the Alpha Core, which to me sounds like Apple Core. Now the Rippaverse is for some people. It's not for a lot of people. I would not recommend Rippaverse if you're a first-time comic book reader. I'd read the standards, even if it's a little older. But whether you like him or not, or as far as his Rippaverse and stuff, whether you like it or not, just know I'm a musician and a composer. I'm not a visual artist, but I pick up on a few things in visual art. I'm not specialized in visual art, but if I pick up on these things, artists need to take themselves very, very seriously for people who do pick up on these things, who are maybe not pros themselves, but maybe semi-professional, maybe they just know art better than most people. So like your readers are comic, if you're a graphic, like whether in comics or graphic novels, visual art is really important. So you need to be really, really good, and you can't make these mistakes. So let me show you what I mean. And hopefully it's not too too scandalous. One second. I'm going to share. I'm still here, but it's just to prove my point that you can actually criticize or be analytical for something that you are not specialized in. Oh, that's the wrong settings. Share screen, turn off audio, Ripaverse. Okay. So this isn't the scandalized art. It's not that even that scandalized. So first things first, I remember when they first introduced this character, her name is like Yaira. She was pretty feminine looking. She was thinner. She was still muscular, but like I will say, I know women out there have ripped arms a little bit like this. But tell me, guys, tell me, visual artists, this is more masculine arm form than feminine. Like look how the muscles, I don't know if you could see my mouse aligning the muscles under her shoulder, through her biceps. And I think that, like, from what I could see, that I could be wrong, but I feel like that arm is not long enough. Now, I don't know anatomy like some of you guys know anatomy, but as far as the feminine form, who is also very strong, here's the thing. Let's talk about this. We're going to talk about the female anatomy right now, especially in the way of art and aesthetics. She looks pretty, buffed up. She's very muscular and all that. Now, I know they're trying to make her breasts bigger, but here's the thing. Look at the size of this rib cage. Look at the size of her torso and hip. Because of that big size, even if she does have a bigger breast size, it doesn't look that big because it looks almost like a masculine shield, like a piece of armor. I could be wrong about that. This is just my impression. But again, we're talking about informal analysis. So if, she's got the hair going, that's pretty feminine. The lines on her neck is a little masculine. She's got a pretty thick neck for a lady. And I think just all around in general, I don't think it was this face. Let me go a little bit further. Yeah, it was this face. This is a very, very ugly face. Or maybe not ugly, but I would say a very high school plain athlete girl face who has her war face on. Not at all pretty. If she's supposed to be like a goddess or a demigoddess or whatever powerful creature she is, if she's supposed to be the feminine type, that's not the face to do it. She can look mean or she can look aggressive and assertive, but that's not. Her forearm, her wrist looks kind of out of proportion to her arm. I feel like her arms are short. Am I wrong to think that? In respect to her body, I don't know. I'm not a visual artist, so there is that. And then finally, this, no, not that one. This panel here. So this panel here is a whole lot of wrong. I'll tell you what I think sort of works is this middle panel here with her legs and her high heels, and maybe not. I don't know. Her left calf is not is I don't know. It's not lying right. But on a quick glance, you can see, okay, that's okay. I think this form here on the lower right panel is okay, but her hands are kind of like in little gloves. This buttocks here is not right. Either her thighs need to be bigger or her cheeks need to be shaved. It's not right proportionally. And then finally, this right here. Take a look at this foot. If you guys can see it, can you see it? Am I sharing it? Okay, yeah, I'm sharing it fine. Take a look at that foot. Okay, there's so much wrong with that foot. Again, I'm not a visual artist, and I could pick this up as a casual reader. This foot is all kinds of wrong. Let's first talk about the size. It looks really shriveled up. It looks like an old lady's foot, not a powerful goddess's foot, a powerful woman, strong, like kind of the Wonder Woman or whatever of the universe. It looks shriveled. It looks disjointed and angular. It looks too small. Like if she's bending her knee, it needs to be a close-up foot. And then also the most important thing, I think, well, other than the size, I think it needs to be bigger if it's closer to her. If she's bending her knee, then maybe that's the right distance from her body, from her hips. The size is wrong. But look how the shape of the foot is. That shape that the foot is making is for when you are pushing the foot against the wall or against the floor. This is not the foot shape that you have for when you are swimming. Your toes, even if you're swimming like kind of like a dolphin or wading or something, your toes are pointed. Your body, especially after you dive into the water, it needs to be the shape of a torpedo to go faster. I'm not a sports person, but I just know basic physics. Like her toes need to be pointed. We need to see the underneath her foot, not over her foot like it's shown here. So anyway, I'm just kind of picking on him for a second because he's kind of saying, "Oh yeah, Deborah's best work yet." I'm like, it's not good. Like maybe her face is right, but it's kind of pudgy on one side and kind of slim on another side, or maybe that's just the shadow that's not working well. Again, I'm going to stop sharing now, but I'm not a visual artist, and I pick up on these things. You got to have analysis to have good art. And by the way, good art can't be accidental. It's like, oh yeah, I happen to make good art. It's like, no, this is just from years of experience, years of processing art, years of just being immersed in that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, so I was picking on Rip Reverse a little bit because once in a while I'll go on his channel and see what he's been up to and stuff. And he's so proud of his stuff. This is, I don't know, this is like book 7 or 8 now in the queue, or since he's released stuff. And his art is very generic at best. Oh, whoever he chooses, it's like, it's not good. Anyway, I mean, I won't say it's like horrible, but it's like C plus. That's what I'm gonna say. Yeah, let's see. She looks angry. So Brian is a visual artist, so he'll pick up on stuff that I don't know. Like I won't pick up on. So what do you say, Brian, to that? Let's see. It's totally fine, says Scorpio PO. This is for educational purposes. Yeah, that's the thing. Is like I'm not saying like I hope people make bad art on purpose so I can uh, throw some punches, but no, it's not that. It's just like if people want to be good at what they do, they need to be good at what they do. Um, and that takes time. It takes time. I mean, even with my recent release of my music, which I'm very proud of, I want to be at a different level 10 years from now with my music. I'm not going to plateau unless some health condition happens and I'm affected by it or something, but I don't plan on plateauing. Let's see. Let's see. Let me. That's it. Yaira. Yeah. The lips killed it for me. So probably that first or second shot. Yeah. Yeah, they don't look so feminine. Like, are you talking about like her angry pursed lips, like that, where she's kind of jutting out her chin or whatever? I mean, that's masculine looking. Yeah, she looks angry. Yeah, women who are. Let's see. I mean, Bruce Timm's Poison Ivy was angry from time to time, but she still looked like a knockout. She still looked very feminine. Yeah, that's what I thought Final Fantasy. You also say that the rib cage on her is too big. Yeah, so if you want like a big chest for a woman, slim down the rib cage. Yeah, so. Yeah, shave her cheeks. Yeah, exactly. The problem with modern characters, everyone looks way too angry, and and if I'm saying that, says Brian, what else are you saying that? Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. No, I've seen some trailers involving her and stuff, and she just looks angry. Which, you know what? Like, that also doesn't make sense for her character. Because she has ice powers. Like, what is ice and water? Water archetypally Did I say that right? Water is a pacifier. It's a soother. It's a calm thing. So when you have a character, female or male, who's enraged, what do you think of? You think of fire. You think of thunder, you know? You think of wind. Something that is really formidable. Now, I'm not saying you can't come up with scary things with water, like tsunamis and stuff like that, but water has always been that element that is the pacifier, that is the soother, that is the instructor, the teacher. I said it before with Stargate. You got Colonel O'Neill, who is the fire, because he's a Spitfire also. He's also the leader. You got Teal'c, who is the earth. Samantha Carter, who is the wind. She's very intellectual, but she's kind of aloof, especially in the first few seasons. She gets better over time, obviously. And then Daniel Jackson is the water character. He's the teacher. He's the pacifier. He's trying to bridge differences. And in Stargate Atlantis, it's Tayla who's the water, Shepard who's the earth, Ronan who's the fire because he's a big man who you think is the earth, but he's very angry easily based on his experience. And then McKay, he's the wind. He's kind of aloof. He's very intellectual, but he also has poor social skills. And so when I think of Yaira, like someone who has water powers, yeah, use the water as a force of nature, but when I think of someone enraged, like I'm gonna destroy stuff, I'm thinking fire, I'm thinking red, and so there's a disjunction. I don't think that's a word. Disjoint. I don't know. Is disjunction a word? I can't think of it right now. But there's a displacement of archetypes. Okay, someone who's enraged and a Spitfire, they need to have fire powers. Oh, well, I want to do something different. It's like, okay, now I might be particular, Yeah, there are like, Greek and Norse gods of water and heavens and rain and stuff like that who are they have got some temperamental problems, temper tantrums. So I'm not saying water can't be a scary thing within rage, but it's like she's always mad. I think she's always mad. Imaginaria, good to see you. Yeah, isn't that called RBF? Probably. I never liked RBF. I remember I was waiting at my job a long time ago, and one of the project managers said, "Oh, suffering from RBF," and I'm like, "Am I?" And I got mad. So the face was worse. I got mad. Oh, the problem is that the picture is laid out in a confusing manner. Yeah, so you probably know things more like paneling. Like that one, I don't know. Yeah. Wait, I think you're right. I won't share the screen again. Maybe I will. I have to go back though. I have to go back. Sorry. Rip because I think you're right about the panel layout. See, you're thinking much more along the lines of oh shoot, that's not it. That's not the channel. I think he has like multiple channels, so it's kind of hard to find. All right. The panel layout with her diving and stuff. Oh, you're so right. Yeah, so she it looks like she's diving off ground into water, like she's wading and then diving. But the panel before it, she's pretty much submerged to her chest, so she couldn't dive from that angle. I mean, unless she's super powerful. And then like, yeah, there's other stuff. Anyway, you're right. You're right, Brian. Crystal Ashes says it's not the worst I've seen, but I question the anatomy and the foreshortening of that character. The coloring is okay, at least. The bottom panel doesn't really show enough of her body to get a sense perspective. And Private Eye says feet are always difficult. Yes, well, yeah, I'm not saying feet are so easy to come up with, but like when the foot is pushed off inside the water as if you're, pushing your foot off a wall, it's like, that's not how you swim. When you swim, and I'm not an athlete, when you swim, your feet are pointed or at least relaxed. They're drooped. Whereas like it's like like there's no ground. There's no ground. I like when Oroku says I like when Catwoman and Poison Ivy smile too. Yeah, they smile too. They're mischievous. Poison Ivy's evil, but they smile. Yeah, exactly. They don't have to be angry all the time. No, no. I don't think women have to be angry much at all. I'm kind of dim. Kind of dim again. One sec. I'm gonna grab some water real quick. Make sure my mic was unmuted. Normally says private eye. If you have an ice character, they tend to be more fewer words type character. That makes sense. So stoicism with ice, yeah, because it's cold. You're cold. Exactly. Water can be very powerful, says Amy L. A friend of a friend was killed in an industrial accident in his 20s by water. Oh, that's too bad. Yeah, I mean, water is a force of nature. It can be very terrifying. I mean, I lived in North Carolina a few years back, and the flash flooding was a horrible thing. And I remember I was coming home from work, trying to get to my home as soon as possible before the flash floods, and it was a long drive, and my water was almost caught. I was in front of we were all gridlocked traffic, and then there was a lake in front of us, and I was on the left side where the water was piling up and up and up and up, and I had to move over to the exit over the overpass. No one, finally they did leave me, but the water was soon to lift my car into that lake. And fortunately I was scared to death, so scared when it happened. But fortunately my car has a sunroof, and I think I can squeeze through. It's like, okay. If I was caught, I was like, at least I had the sunroof to exit. Yeah, water can be very scary. Yeah, the thing is, Oroku, they like, I remember seeing when I was following Young Rippa for a time, I remember seeing the first images of Yaira, and she was pretty feminine. She was pretty feminine looking. Yeah. Rage is more fire, says Ghost Planet. It's true. Did this all come from Brie Larson's Captain Marvel? Probably. Yeah, like women have this. Women in modern times are so offended when women and men want them to smile, and I don't know why. I don't know why they're offended by that, because I think people should smile in general. I think that's great. But yeah, I mean, but see, the thing is, when women don't smile, they look angrier than men not smiling. So, probably what it is. I mean, even when I'm looking at the chat and I have a look of concentration, and I lose my smile, I'm like, I look ticked off, but I'm really not. Yeah, Mr. Freeze can join a Christmas parade to improve his mood. True. That's kind of nothing. Like Brie Larson, she's kind of old news now, but it's kind of funny you do say like she could be possibly a replicant. I mean, that would be a good role for her. That would be a really good role for her. Brian Gilmartin says ice can also reference intelligence, the idea of cooler heads prevailing. Very nice. Yeah, calm, cool, collected. Yeah. I had this in mind when I came up with a blue clad character whose name is Jennifer. She's able to project ice with her. You can finish it. Probably with her hands. I think ice powers make for good villains. I mean, the original Snow Queen is a cold, scary character who kidnaps children and freezes them. It's funny, I can't remember if I've said this on stream, but like if Prof and I, let's say we like Marvel, you know how they have inhuman abilities. Like, as much as I love water, because I drink a lot of water and I think water is beautiful, I think I would want fire powers because I am such a naturally cold person, and I don't like being cold. I stay so cold and I try to keep warm all the time. So I feel like for me, the best power would be firepower for me. And then Prof, who's perpetually hot in more ways than one, he would have ice powers because he's always miserable because he's so hot. He's not miserable as a person, but like especially in the summer, he's like him having ice powers in the summer would be awesome. And then me having fire powers. Now here's the thing, I love snow. I love snow. I love being outside in the cold, but I don't like being inside and being cold inside. Let's see. Where'd you go, Brian? You kind of just stopped your comment. Uh, oh, I missed your comment up here too. Sometimes StreamYard skips comments. I won't see all the comments coming in because I'm not on YouTube. You say red is also a violent color. Ugh. For example, Zero from Mega Man X had a red armor, was sealed by his character, while Dr. Wily, sealed by his creator, Dr. Wily, for being violently uncontrollable due to a flaw in his programming. Yes, red can be a very scary color. Like characters who are villains wearing red is a very intimidating color. Red attracts the eye, for better for worse. Red is a warning sign. I love the color red though. I, we're taking our Christmas, or Prof did. He took most of the Christmas decorations down, and then he put up Valentine's Day, and it's like red everywhere with lights, and it makes me so happy. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Hey, there's Professor Geek. Yeah, Orko, if you probably knew that we were married. Yeah, red is the rage in Red Lanterns. I think there was like wasn't there like a line of comics that all the other superheroes were had lantern power, so Wonder Woman was red, but it was for love and warmth. I think Batman was yellow because he instilled fear in the enemies, and then Superman was blue for hope, which makes sense. So Private Eye says red is the color of justice in my countries. I don't know if that's a thing. I mean, oh no, that's fine. Roku, that's fine. No worries. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, we have red, white, and blue. I think red is for the red stripes is to mark the blood of those fallen for our freedom, I think. You know, white and blue is a very common combination for flags, for national flags. Red's a really important color, I think. Oh yeah, Brian says red can also trigger hunger, which is why restaurant chains use extensively in their logos for marketing. Yeah, yeah. Chick-fil-A with red and white, McDonald's with red and yellow, uh, Hardee's with kind of red and yellow. It makes sense if it's producing warm food like French fries and stuff. That makes sense. I think with Culver's, for instance, that's blue and white, but that makes sense because they provide like milkshakes and frozen custard and stuff like that. How is yellow fear? I guess I still don't get the color associations here. I don't know where so yellow does signify fear. Okay, so in a couple of ways, from what I know. Again, I'm no specialist. First of all, there was an old saying like yellow-bellied, yellow-livered or something like that. It means when the person is terrified. In cartoonists or animation shows, like especially in comic or comedy cartoons like Wile E. Coyote or whatever, or Sylvester, if they're terrified of something, like a yellow line will go down their back to signify they're scared. Yellow is used for our caution signs and our caution tape, like, oh, we're quarantining this area, this is a crime scene, caution. So yellow signifies fear and caution, even though it's like a nice happy color too. But it's to signify light, attention, caution, and fear. Oh, you yellow-bellied lily lizard. That's right. So it came from that phrase, I think, or that phrase came from something else. Yeah. Oh, Scarecrow was Yellow Lantern. What? Batman was not he didn't have a yellow ring? Huh. I thought he had a ring. Okay. and I don't even know what this issue was. I read it somewhere else. Like I think like you know how you can take a Harry Potter quiz, like what house you're in, or a lightsaber quiz, what color lightsaber you'd have. Well, they have lantern rings, and I think I was like indigo, which I love the color indigo, but I was like, um, why? I'm not like peace and love. So I was indigo against black though. If I had a costume, if I had like a superhero costume and my powers were indigo with a black suit, that would look cool. I think that would look great. And then if like my hair flamed indigo or my eyes flamed indigo, that'd be cool. But I was indigo. I don't even know if that's a legitimate color for the lantern rings. Do they do just the 4 main colors or do they do the whole spectrum? Or spectra? I don't know. Anyway, red, says Amy L, is virtually invisible. I don't know why people use it on posters for emphasis. Emphasis. Actually, I don't know what you mean by invisible. I don't know how it's invisible. You'd have to explain because I don't know anything about color theory and stuff like that. Let's see. Yeah, so Amy L says, I thought yellow is used for caution signs simply because it's easier to see. Yeah, it's easier to see, but caution means, oh, proceed with caution or back off, you know. Oh, something is at work here that could be dangerous. Yeah. Oh, a clone of Batman. Okay, so Ghost Planet knows the lore. I had read it in an article or something, so I didn't read the story myself. So yeah, yellow belly meant coward, which means fear. Like you're a coward because you're letting fear dominate you. So yeah, so that's probably where it came from. I don't know. We should go on a homework assignment and see where did the yellow. Why was that the signifier of fear? It almost makes more sense if orange was the signifier of fear, because like we have Halloween with orange and stuff. The autumn of days, like the twilight approaching. That makes more sense than yellow, in my opinion. My wonderful process, I think it comes from the blood draining from a person's face in the face of danger. They look yellow and pale. Got it. Ill. They look ill. They look unhealthy. Interesting. Cool. I think I'll end it there. So hopefully that made sense. What I said, you know, just keep up good analysis. And how do you analyze? Well, you always consume or you always absorb art, good art. And if you run into a bad book or run into a bad film, don't go intentionally knowing it's going to be bad, as everyone seems to be doing these days. I'll say, oh, that book, I thought that was going to be good. It wasn't. Okay, why was it not good? Oh, that book was excellent. Why was it excellent? Just tell me your reasons. And don't say anything like, oh, that's the discussion. That is the discussion of the 20th century or the 21st century. It's like, why? Can you tell me why? No, I just think the speakers were great. All right. So anyway, let's end it there. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until I see you next, keep producing, preserving, and promoting that good art you love. And I'll catch you later.